My name is Astghik Martirosyan. I am a vocalist, pianist, composer from Armenia. I did my bachelor's as a classical pianist in Armenia and later on continued my education in the United States. I had a great fortune to have many musicians, musicologists around me when I was in Armenia that deeply studied Armenian folk music and religious music. And I remember just taking every opportunity to learn more from them. We are always in touch. Every time I go back to Armenia, I try to learn more and more. As an Armenian that has family that comes from different parts of Armenia, I found myself actually discovering more and more about my heritage and my ancestors through the songs, because there's so much documented in music. And it's fascinating how one can find so many answers about themselves going through traditional music and just learning about it more. From the early Middle Ages, Armenians had quite advanced musical aesthetics that included such concepts as the calling of sound or music, or nature as a source of inspiration for the arts, the relation of sacred and secular elements. With the creation of Khazer, which is Armenian musical notation system, from the 8th century, Armenians were able to document their melodies. As culture evolved and music evolved, by 15th century, Khazer were so complex that it was almost impossible to read and comprehend. Later on, Hambartum Limonjan came up with a more modernized, more accessible version of Armenian notation system that is in a way a synthesis of Western notation system and Armenian notation system, Khazer. We still use this notation system that was founded by Limonjan. Armenian folk songs are generally monodic. They are formed exclusively from melodic elements. The diatonic scale evolved, and eventually they come up with a scale that consists of major tetrachords linked in a way that last note of each tetrachord is a first note of the following one. However, it's important to note that this is not an equal tempered scale. The third note of each tetrachord is slightly flattered. Because of this, we have variety of intervals. Speaking of Armenian musical heritage, that includes folkloric music, professional music, religious music, it is impossible not to mention the name of Komitas. Armenian language encompasses over 60 different dialects, and these distinctive differences are also reflected in the music as well. Komitas deeply studied this subject by traveling from Eastern to Western Armenian villages and cities and documented, transcribed, collected Armenian melodies and songs. We have over 4,000 different songs collected from different regions. Komitas divided Armenian songs into first two categories: the songs from the mountains and the songs from plains. What he found out is that the songs that were created in the areas that were full of mountains were actually quite harsh in their sound. They were more articulated. There was a lot of emphasis on recitative. But in contrast, the songs that were made up more in the regions that had more plain landscape were actually more lyrical and dreamy in their context. Then he divided those into larger regions according to the dialect. We often may see songs that travel through different regions, but they are different lyrically. The interpretation of it is also different depending on certain geographical reasons or lifestyle or dialect, of course. Armenian folk music is generally monophonic. They are being performed either solo or choir in unison, depending on the style of it. For example, women work songs are often performed with a choir. As women would gather in the village to work together, they would grind wheat or bake bread or work with the wool. They would sing songs to entertain themselves. They would sing songs in dialogue or unison. Oftentimes, the rhythm of these songs is linked with the rhythm of the work. That somehow would make their work easier. So because of this, we have very interesting meters, many times irregular. Some that are very common are 5/8 or 7/8. Love songs are, of course, a huge part of Armenian folkloric heritage. They are very lyrical. Actually, most of the time have a very small range, something like from 4th to 7th. Nature always is a part of a subject matter in love songs. In fact, land that surrounds us is a source of inspiration in different forms of art in Armenian culture. In work songs, for example, men would spend more time in solitude with their land, working far from home, their family, their loved ones, and they would develop a very special connection with their land, and they would sing songs for it. The land was regarded as a representation of a sublime, complex beauty. Ritual songs are another important part of Armenian folkloric heritage. There are songs that survive centuries, and we have examples from pagan times. For example, Terendes, which is a ritual of worship of fire. There are also different categories of ritual songs. For example, family ritual songs, like wedding cycle consists of over 100 items, and each of these items are performed in a very specific time of the wedding ceremony. There are different variants of this cycle, depending on the region, of course. Another type of ritual songs is war songs. They're heroic in their spirit, and oftentimes we will see the relationship from fourth degree going to the tonic. This kind of gives a sense of groundedness. It has such an empowering spirit in it. This tradition of using that kind of a structure comes from early times of Gusanner, when they would sing about epic of Sasunti David. Then that evolved and really survived until 18th century.